I have been getting a lot of comments recently about people who are also struggling with PMDD, which is something that I have and I've talked about online before, but I really realized I haven't done an updated episode on it. So I decided, you know what? We're going to do that. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about PMDD. We're going to talk about birth control. We're going to talk about other options. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things. I feel like this is a really important topic to talk about because one of the reasons it took me so long to get on birth control was because of the stigma, because of the way that I think the media portrayed birth control. And I'm working on a paper right now about this. I'm not going to talk about all of the stuff, but I will talk about some of the stuff that I've noticed while researching. And I think that birth control has, and I want to preface this by saying, I'm not telling you to get on birth control. I'm not telling you to go off of birth control. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying my experience and to tell you that if you are on birth control or you need to go on birth control, that's okay. Because I think that I haven't heard enough of the that's okay from places online. Hi, Lucia. She just, anywhere I go, she just follows and has to be close. It's a cutie. I feel like I haven't heard enough of the idea of it's okay to be on birth control if you need to. Instead, I've heard a lot of it's unnatural, it's, ruining your life, you don't know the real you, which for some people, maybe being on birth control isn't the best thing, right? I know plenty of people who had to go off of it because of how difficult it made their lives. That is totally reasonable. But I also know a lot of people that have to be on birth control or still are on birth control, and I would never say that they don't know the real them, right? I would never say that I don't know the real me. In fact, I have PMDD, which stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is PMS, but worse. I'm not going to get into all the science about it. I might do another updated episode once this paper is completely written. But basically, it is, for me, 3 weeks out of the month. There's 4 weeks in a month. I was almost in a state of psychosis. In fact, in some cases, I would be. It was definitely worse because of my PMDD disorder in the past and how my body and brain would react to this hormonal change. But I would be in this state where I'd be getting panic attacks every day, randomly. I would not be able to think anymore. I'd have the worst brain fog. It'd be so hard to get out of bed. I wouldn't be able to even make simple decisions anymore, like what to eat for dinner, things like that. And it got to a point where I really seriously could not function the way that I should be able to function. In fact, that was before I even declared neuroscience and economics as majors, and the only reason I was able to declare them was because I had gotten on birth control and finally felt like I had some control over my life in general. So for me, I would even argue that being on birth control is what allowed me to know the real me, to finally experience the real me. It's all different for each individual, and that is the really big thing that I want to stress here is that I think for anyone who watches this that is not a content creator, just because you hear something online doesn't mean it's true. And just because you hear something online doesn't mean that everyone else is doing it. And if it seems like everyone else is doing it, it doesn't mean that you need to be doing it too. And if this is a content creator watching this, be careful about what you see online, right? Like, I'm very aware of the fact that I'm talking about this too, right? And I don't want to pressure anyone into, yes, you should be on birth control. No, you shouldn't be on birth control. I think it's totally fine to share your experiences, but I think that we need to make it abundantly clear that, like, this is my experience and I'm not telling anyone else to change nothing like that, because there's a lot more to it than just, hey, I'm stating my experience, right? Like, there can be sponsored things, there can be other things, there can be other motives, and that would be, I guess, to get on birth control, but then maybe you're saying, hey, don't be on birth control, be on something else instead. And like, well, is that something you're being sponsored by? Like, I think we need to be very careful about what we say. And even if it's not sponsored at all, I think we need to be really abundantly clear to say, like, this is my experience and I want to share this in case anyone else feels the same way. But like, you don't have, like, I know that this is unique to me type of thing. So anyways, just to really bring that point home, I have been doing a lot of research and writing some papers and stuff. And there's a lot. I mean, you can go out and look for these papers. There's so many of them. It's really interesting. But one of the ones that really caught my attention was one paper that said, it was a 2023 study. It's a study that's looking at what mentions of contraceptive use are even like online, what is even in the media. And they found that the majority of people who were talking about contraceptives online were not medical professionals, which is fine, but that also is a place where we can get a lot of misinformation, right? So you should really be talking about your experience and your experience only. And I mean, personally, I have seen many videos talking about, this is what I did, you need to do it too. It's not just implying that or anything. Like, I have quite literally seen videos saying like, girl, you need to get off birth control. If you're on birth control, you don't know the real you. Like, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm sorry if this makes people angry, but just stop, please. Like, that's not okay, because there are people who need to be on birth control. If I was not on birth control, I don't know what I probably wouldn't even be able to continue this podcast, in all honesty. I'd be in bed all day, every day. I probably wouldn't have graduated college, or it would be incredibly difficult to, and I wouldn't be graduating with the degrees that I'm going to be graduating with, right? And yes, I know that this is I have a lot of emotions, but I think that that's something that's important in this case. I try not to come on the podcast with big emotions very much, but I think in this case, it's actually kind of important. I think that we need to talk about this. I think it's something that I've been wanting to talk about for years, and I've never really known how to. And now that I'm doing this research, I'm thinking, yeah, we got to talk about it. It's more than just my experience. This is like, there are studies to back this up. And so in this, 44% of the influencers who stated that they discontinued contraceptive use said that they discontinued it to be more natural. I don't know what that means. And I am someone who has gone into the doctor before and said, no, I'm not going to get on birth control because it's not natural. And I still don't know what that means. And if someone wants to explain what that means, then like that, I would love to understand that, because hormonal birth control is using hormones that are natural to the body. So how is it unnatural? And in that way, would you also say things like being on medication for anxiety and depression are unnatural and you shouldn't do that? And would that mean that, say, if you had thyroid issues or diabetes, being on medication, taking insulin, things like that is unnatural and you shouldn't do it? I think that idea, like, I have had that idea before. I was surrounded by people who told me it was unnatural and told me not to get on birth control. And it wasn't just in the media, it was also the people who were very close to me. And I 100% believe that. I was like, it's not natural. I can't do that. I have to find other solutions. By the way, I've tried like so many things. And I know that my PMDD is very, very bad. And I know that it likely stems from having Pandas disorder. But I know I'm not the only one that has bad PMDD. I'm not the only one who has a special case, right? And I think that it's important to recognize that, because also too, like, if we're saying things like birth control is unnatural and that we should be getting off of birth control, then what does that mean about other medications? And I'm not saying there's an answer. I'm really truly asking that, because by my understanding, and maybe people want to get off of birth control because they feel like they're only on it because of some, patriarchal ideal, and that makes sense, right? If you're only on it because you feel like you've been pressured to be, then don't be. Like, I think it's totally fine to get off of it. But I wouldn't necessarily go as far as saying it's unnatural personally, because I do feel like, I feel like a lot of our medications, like, how do you come up with medications? vaccines, things like that. We're really getting into it. Like all of that, I feel like are, not all, I mean, but like a lot of the stuff that we're on, like even if it isn't natural to your body, like there's a lot of medications that we do need to be on. So what's wrong with it? You know, it is natural, but if it wasn't natural, what's wrong with that either way? I think what we fail to recognize is that there are so many different reasons to be on birth control, and they're not just for the actual birth control part, right? Like I'm gay, like I don't need birth control, but I'm on it, and I likely will be on it for the rest of my life because there are other reasons that you might need to be on birth control. And I feel like that is really important to recognize. I feel like that is something that we don't talk about enough. There are a lot of different reasons why someone might be on birth control, and maybe they need it. And also this unnatural part still confuses me. And I realize this is a very different episode because I'm trying to process it as I'm speaking it. Because it is something that has still been difficult for me to wrap my mind around. But if we're going around telling people that this is unnatural, then doesn't that create a stigma and an idea that like if you're on birth control, there's something wrong with you, like you're being unnatural, right? Like what if we said that about anxiety meds? And people do say that. This, you know, the people who were around me telling me not to be on birth control were also telling me not to be on my anxiety meds. That's a whole other story. But like, I think a lot of the influencers, maybe I'm wrong, are probably okay with like meds for mental health, meds for like, I don't know, taking Tylenol if you like get hurt or something, right? Like all these different things I feel like we're probably okay with. I feel like they're probably on some medication. So what is I just don't get it, I guess. And I think that it ultimately, by my understanding, boils down to the idea of like we are on birth control and we're trying to find other ways to be more natural, I guess, without subscribing to patriarchal ideas. Totally get it. Because there is birth control for men. Why aren't they using it? You know, like there are so many different options, but why are women the one like, I don't know, I really don't. And that's a whole other story. Yes, it is something that is definitely a patriarchal thing. Like it has this structure, foundation that was built to it that like, yes, like that is something. But like, I think that that's also really important to clearly state then, because if that is the reason why we're pushing away from birth control, then sure, if you don't need to be on it, why would you be on it? Like, I mean, I think that's the same for any medication. If you don't need to be on it, then don't be on it. And birth control is something that the medical profession does sometimes just tend to be like, hey, issue, take birth control. Like we do kind of throw birth control at everyone. And that I understand. And that I agree with, right? Birth control is thrown at you for many different reasons. And a large majority of that is because we don't know anything about women's health. Like women's health is this thing that like a lot of people don't understand. And it just hasn't been researched enough because patriarchy, right? Like, I mean, yeah, like because men are the default and women are just like, oh, I guess sort of, you know, whatever. Like, but yes. So if that is the reason why you are saying birth control is unnatural, I maybe wouldn't say unnatural because it makes the idea that like those who are on it are being unnatural. But I understand. I really do understand. And I totally, like, I get it. But also like, let's not pressure each other to be on a medication or not be on a medication. Let's be building each other up, right? Like if we're mad at the fact that we're getting birth control thrown at us all the time, let's push for research. Let's push for more understanding. But also we need to understand that like we are not professionals, right? I am not a professional. I'm not a medical professional. I am not a medical professional. I am just someone who is studying neuroscience and reading a bunch of articles about it, right? But it is interesting to see this behavior and see these patterns and wonder like, well, what is it? Like, I mean, personally, I've never had a doctor tell me that being on birth control is unnatural. I've never had a doctor tell me that I need to be off of birth control. So why am I feeling like, why did I feel pressured and feel like I should be listening to people who are not medical professionals when the medical professionals were telling me that it's safe? that I'm okay, right? All of that to be said, it is such an in-depth topic. There's so much that goes into this. The foundations of how this idea was built, why we are on birth control in general. Are there other medical issues that are causing you to be on birth control? Is it just for the birth control part? Do you really need to be on it, or is it just because someone threw it at you and you said, sure, great, whatever? Like all of these different things. And I understand that it is an in-depth topic, but that is why we need to be careful when we talk about it, because there is so much to it. And it's okay to be on birth control. And it's also okay to not want to be on birth control. And it's also okay to go off your birth control. And it's also okay to have never been on birth control and never be on birth control. Like, all of these are okay. Everyone's situation, everyone's body is different, and you have to respect your own. And so I think that it's interesting the way that pressure and how public media has started to become part of this story here. It's not just like there's so much to it that it is like I mean even now still cannot wrap my mind around it. And I'm doing this entire episode and I'm going to have to edit it back and see if any of it makes sense, because it is such an in-depth topic. But all of this to say, I have PMDD. If you're watching this and you have PMDD, you are not alone. There are other options, and also it is okay to be on birth control. I'm going to be honest here, I'm on Yasmin, which is approved for PMDD. It is, I think Yaz and Yasmin, I could be totally wrong, are the only ones that are approved for PMDD. And you guys, it has been incredible. Absolutely amazing, because I've never had my emotions so stable. I've never felt so stable in my entire life. And I had to go all the way to Australia to go to a women's health doctor for them to put me on Yasmin, right? Yasmin is approved in the US too, right? For PMDD. And no doctor ever put me on Yasmin. It was just try this one, try this one, try this one, try this one. Like, I was constantly changing which birth control I was on, when there's this one that's approved for me right here. I should not have had to go all the way to Australia to get that, right? And it's the same thing in Australia. It's not saying that I was talking to them there and they said, yeah, it's a really big issue here. I just was in Sydney and happened to be lucky that there was a women's health clinic there. And they had very much so gone their own direction away from the norm and been like, yeah, we gotta do something about this, because no one knows anything about women's health. And there's so many differing opinions and stigma and research and lack of research, and it's all over the place. And so, like, it's a big topic. If you are confused, if you are feeling stressed, I do not blame you, because I am confused and I am feeling stressed. I get it, you guys. I get it. But it's okay to be on birth control. And this is my, I guess, way to hopefully call out the fact that, like, y'all, like, I know I have a podcast. I know that, like, I've had 10,000 listens on this thing. I know that, like, people listen to it, and I know that, like, it's impacting people. And my number one thing of all of the things, my number one thing is that I really, truly try, and I hope, and I'm sure that this is not true because I think I'm human, but my biggest hope is that I will never, ever make someone feel pressured to change anything in terms of something that's going to hurt them, right? My thing here is I want to inspire growth, but I never, ever want you to feel like you are being pressured to do something that is against what you're supposed to, your values, your anything, right? And this is my call out to all the influencers, to all of the fact that, like, social media, like, you guys, like, be careful what you say. I know we're trying to be honest online, and I think that's really important, but we have to recognize that there are other people on the other side of that watching this. And I mean it because I, who am also creating stuff online, am one of those people who is like, I get it, because I was one of those people who was watching this stuff and hearing people tell me that being on birth control was unnatural. I didn't know the real me, and I'd be sobbing, you know, especially because I wasn't on birth control, so my emotions were a little everywhere because PMDD, so, you know, it's like a big circle there. But, you know, like, I think we need to be so incredibly careful. Like, I will be the first person to say, like, I hate social media. I use social media and I hate it. I love it and I hate it. And I don't know how to, like, process that. Be careful, you guys. Like, it's like, I don't know. Just be careful. Be smart, please. Like, think, you know, like, I think a lot of having an online space comes from people wanting to be famous, wanting maybe validation, wanting to feel like they've got this, you know, like it's this thing. It's like being an influencer is kind of romanticized, and I think it's fine to be, but like I will always stand by the fact that the number one influencers, the number one best content creators are the ones that have their values, and they stand to those values. There are a few people I can think of that, like, I have seen that they have these values and they're never gonna change that, in terms of like they will always prioritize their values and honesty, and like they're not gonna change for the idea of fame or the idea of being popular, you know? Those are the people. And I think there's just a lot online that, like, just because you hear it online doesn't mean it's true. And I'm saying that for my stuff too. Like, with all of this, it's interesting, right? But do your own research too. Don't listen to just one person. Don't listen to just people online. Like, you are you, and no one is ever going to know. Like, the only person who's going to know what you need the best in terms of medical stuff is your medical professional. So listen to them, right? I think we're going to leave it at that. I think I've talked too long. But yeah, stay on your birth control, y'all. Or go off of it. Or don't ever go on it. Or, I don't know. Do what feels right for you. Do what feels the healthiest for you. And I'll see you next time.